Hello and welcome to week one this summer, you brave souls taking classes during the best time to live in Maine. Of course, I'm teaching a class during the time that's the best to be in Maine. Welcome to Psych 306 Behavior Management. My name is Dr. Mark Kavanagh, and I've been teaching at UMA on a part-time basis for many years after a very long history at Kennebec Valley Community College. And it is exciting for me to teach this class. This is the first time I teach this class at UMA, but I have been teaching this class for decades at KVCC. So behavior management is the course that you signed up for this summer. And what I'm going to do with this first video, we're going to go over Brightspace, the course book, and the course timeline. Those three components, the very important components to my courses. Going to look at those, and then we're going to look at what are the expectations for this first week in class. Now, I'm going to urge you to look at these videos each week. Each Monday, I'm going to post this sometime in the morning, giving you a rundown as to what's going on in class, what's due, looking at the assignments, and this is really important that you take the opportunity to watch these videos so that you can orient yourself to what the expectations are that week. It is also not uncommon for me to look at the material that I've written and in hindsight think I might have done it better. It's pretty rare, but it does happen. And I might change up the instructions a little bit for some clarity, or might even point you in a different direction when I find that the sort of the ambiance of the class, or maybe current events, sort of move it in a certain direction. So I will be doing that. So make sure that you watch these videos. My practice is also to be extremely responsive to emails from you if you have any questions. We also have an open discussion board within Brightspace called the Course Lounge, where you can post questions and you can answer them for each other. I'll be monitoring that. And when I grade things, I will be posting announcements in the class. I use that tool to tell you that I finished grading something. So you don't have to wonder if something is graded. You just have to wait for that announcement to come out. I do it every time. Try to be very responsive on the grading. It is a less busy time, but yet as if you watch the video that I have about me, you'll know I'm in a rock band and we tour around the United States in the summer more than any other time of the year. But this is an online class. While I'm in the plane or while I'm grading all the time, so that won't disturb things. So let's take a look at Brightspace. First off, here we have the entry page into Brightspace. Now this is going to appear as I see it. I guess I can switch this to the learner. Let's see how this is how you see it. Not much different here. But we have that you're just watching the video right here, and then I have a welcome page right here, and then all the regular stuff that UMA puts in there. I closed this module right here. You can see all the blocks because the design of my class really emphasizes just heading up to the content area here. Click on content and click on syllabus. Here it came up right here, and you have the basic course information, including the start date and the end date. It's online. Here's a video about navigating the course and using all the tools within the course. I have to tell you, I haven't looked at this video for quite some time. You're probably familiar with Brightspace. There might be some things that are off, and I wouldn't trust that video very far, but you can watch that to learn about how I use Brightspace. Then we go down here, very important area here, textbook and coursebook information. Right here, the book, Behavior Management in the 7th edition, written by yours truly, came out in 2024. You can get that through Apple Books as an ebook. You can get it through Amazon Print, but you can also, I submitted the order, get this at the UMA bookstore. So Make sure that you get that book. The course book contains all the lectures, links, videos, instructions for assignments and quizzes and discussions are all in the course book. They're not in Brightspace. And I know that that's a little different modality than most. Most you'll see week 1, week 2, week 3, something like that. Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter, unit, module, whatever, all of those different ways. None of that exists in my class. It's a separate book, contains everything. It's a digital book, or you can get it in print form. All the material is in that. So you have to get that. There's no replacement of that in the course itself. And as we'll see, there's really only one other link in this class that you need to deal with. Let's go back to the syllabus page here. After this section, there's some information about me, how to get in touch with me. There's my email. And this is a little brief video that I came up with to kind of introduce you to me, my whole thing, my life, and all that. And then we have a copy of the course syllabus. You print that out here. We can see all the chapters in the course book, the different kind of activities. I go through the course book itself, the chapter quizzes and assignments, attendance if this class is face-to-face or online. And then there's a special assignment, what I call it kind of a capstone special assignment, where you'll be applying the skill set that you're getting out of this class of using behavior management techniques in order to change a personal behavior of your own. So we're going to be getting into that a little bit. Once you get introduced you to the ABC contingency theory, we can start talking about building up a plan that you're going to be able to put in place and evaluate and modify and whatnot over the course of this semester. So if you're thinking, I want to eat better, or I want to drink more water, or I want to exercise more, or I want to really work on my time management, this is an ideal time. I'm a professional behavior manager. I do this kind of like on a clinical basis. So, in fact, my undergraduate degree was in psychology / behaviorism. So really, this is a very, very big part of my philosophy. I use various methods for managing my time that allow me to get a lot of things done and really avoid the tendency I have actually for procrastination. I actually work very diligently using the stuff of this class to ensure that I don't fall into the trap of procrastination. Now, keeping in mind, procrastination is not a personality style. It's not something that, oh, I'm a procrastinator like. It's a behavior, and that behavior can be managed. And so we'll be learning about those things as we go. Now, I brought you to that main page here. Under content, we have syllabus. There's all kinds of material here that UMA puts in all of the classes. They have student resources, there's faculty resources, UMA library resources. I'm not sure if you see the faculty resources, but there it is for me. The only one you really have to be concerned about is this one. I created this. I don't use the calendar. This is a single document called a course timeline. And what this does, you read through here, it kind of tells you about the whole process in class. Here, and then we have every week outlined. So beginning this week, we're going to be doing Chapter 1, what is behavior management, and Chapter 1 discussion, Chapter 1 quiz. Once you've read and comprehend the material from the course book in Chapter 1, what is behavior management, you go to the end of that chapter, as we'll see shortly, and you will find instructions for discussion 1 and quiz 1. So you'll go back into Brightspace, and when you're ready to participate in Chapter 1 discussion, you click there. When you're ready to participate and submit your answers for Chapter 1 quiz, you go there, and so on through the class. You can see there's probably roughly, let's see, does it work out that way? 1 chapter per week. And then here we have the personal change project, but you're going to start that way early. It's due the week before the last, but you're going to start that, probably, right there. On week 8, I have a note to begin work on the personal change special assignment. So that's sort of it for Brightspace. We have the course book and we have Brightspace where we're going to be submitting work. We have in the discussion section, there's a course questions. There's, let's go look at that. Because sometimes people miss that because I don't have the links are right here, the course lounge, course questions. But if you go up to course resources and you go to, oh, is it there? Go to content. Assessments. Under assessments, go to discussions. And here you're going to see course questions and the course lounge. You can post to those. And then all the graded discussions here. Now, this is the only place in the course where you're actually going to see this material comes from this material comes from the course book. And it's replicated. It gets replicated in the discussions. The quizzes and the assignments don't have that. Only the discussions have the actual prompt. The quizzes, it'll just be a quiz. You have to look at the course book to see what the questions are. The assignment will just be a drop box with a grading rubric, and you'll have to look at the course book to get the instructions on how to do that. So essentially, the way this class works is you start off every week. If you want to work ahead, that's fine. Since I just said it, I'll say it now. You can work ahead, but you can't post in the discussion boards ahead. You can prepare your post, no problem. Get that all ready. But the only discussions that should be active are the current ones. Don't go posting ahead. I will stop that from happening, actually. It creates a lot of stress for individuals who have to focus just on 1 week at a time. So we're just going to avoid that. But you can work on the assignments and the quizzes all you want. You can get that all done ahead of time if you want. Just be mindful that, you might have to redo some of them. So here, the process is every week you log into the class. You look on Monday, you look at my video, you look at the course timeline, you get a gist of what's going on, and then you go and read the course book. Read all that material, click on all the links. If you get the print version, don't worry, I put little QR codes so you can scan with your phone. If I want you to watch a video, you can scan the QR code with your phone and watch the video. So it's an interactive print book. You get a sense of all that. Prepare your discussions, prepare your quizzes, your answers to the quiz questions, and then prepare your assignments if there's one for that particular chapter. And then when you're ready, you submit them to the course. The discussions, as with many discussions in an online class, require you to post a response to my prompt and reply to at least 2 other people for every single discussion. That and those 3 components and your writing, which I evaluate with another piece of the grading rubric, is what produces the grade for your discussion. The grading in this class is pretty straightforward. You have the quizzes, you have the assignments, you have discussions, and you have the final project, each worth 25% of your final grade. So that final project's a big one. That's worth 1/4 of your final grade. So it's going to be important to get into that one. Now we go back here, we have, so all I've really said is that in terms of when you go into the class, you go to the content section, you go to the syllabus, and you go to the course timeline. That's pretty much it. Now the other thing, when you go to the syllabus and you get your book here, I'm going to show you what it looks like. So I have a digital copy of the book loaded up right here. And there we are. So this is the 7th edition of this particular book. I wrote it. And it starts off with, the course book series. These are personally written, and I don't have, well, actually, I just confirmed a contract with a copy editor, and they're going to be making their way through all of my course books. So sometimes there's spelling mistakes, or I'm just making error in how I'm writing, my flight of ideas and stuff like that. Be patient with that. Tell me Tell me when there's something that's misspelled so I can fix it for the next one. Tell me when something's a little confusing. I'll provide clarity to you. I'll provide clarity to the class. I don't want that to be a barrier. So we move on here. Here's the index covering all the chapters. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the place for the personal change project. Then we get into some front material here about how the coursebook works, the different sections, the actual alignment of the organizational components of each chapter, the QR codes, whatnot. And then I've aligned this particular course to the brand spanking new alignment not alignment, but to the outcomes of the from the American Psychological Association on what students should get from a psychology degree. So what you'll see is for all the assignments are posted in red when that assignment is specifically geared toward that particular outcome. So you'll see under content, knowledge, and applications, one of the goals of the APA is that students of psychology will be able to describe key concepts, principles, and theories in psychological science. And the Chapter 3 assignment on the ABC contingency theory is the assignment in this course that relates to that outcome. So it's just the assignments. The quizzes and the discussions are more formative. There's certainly a summative quality to the quizzes, but you redo the quiz. You can actually redo the quizzes, so it's a building of the knowledge. And I decided that I would only focus in this area on the written discussions for a couple reasons. First, they're very summative in terms of demonstrating a particular skill. All the assignments are geared toward doing that. But probably more importantly, because they're an assignment, you have a document that you created. These are all documents that you create in a word processor and you upload them into the Dropbox. You have a copy of that. So all of the assignments that are in this course that align to these outcomes, you can collect into your portfolio, along with my comments and my grading and all that stuff. So it's a really great resource for portfolio building. And this is all stuff you can skip over. This is not necessary. No test on this. I also align these things with the American Association of Colleges and Universities value rubrics about value-added learning in undergraduate education. That's what the value stands for here. What assignments align with those. We then go into this section here that describes the changes I made from edition 6 to edition 7. There's me, and we're here on what is behavior management, the first chapter. Now, as you'll see in the explanation of the course book, all the chapters are organized the same way. And they follow an acronym called ALADA. This is an instructional design model that I created that each letter accounts for attention, learning outcomes, teaching, and assessment. So each chapter has a section at the beginning called attention, something that will grab your attention. Sometimes I put cartoons in there. Sometimes I, kind of a historical perspective or something to kind of get you ready for what we're going to be talking about. Then the learning outcomes are the specific learning outcomes for that chapter. They somewhat align. They align with those APA outcomes, but they're phrased different and they're very content specific. So you look at those learning outcomes, those are going to align with my expectations in the assessment section. The next section of the chapter, teaching, is whatever. Text, videos, links, whatever, kind of how I'm guiding you through the material in my own sort of, as if you were sitting in class, but you're not seeing my lectures. Sometimes you do, and it's the accumulated knowledge to bring you to the assessments for that chapter. Then you get to the last section in that chapter, and it describes the discussions, quizzes, and assignments. So let's quickly go through this here. We have what is behavior management. We go right into the attention section where I talk about social control. There's the learning outcomes. Then we go into teaching, the myth associated with behavior management being about punishment, the goals of psychology. There's all this material here that I'll go over in just a second. Then we get to the assessment section, and the green text, which only appears in the first chapter, explains this section. But you'll see there's a chapter 1 discussion, and there's a chapter 1 quiz, and I've given you the text for the discussion, which replicates in the course itself in Brightspace. And chapter 1 quiz, I give you the questions. I want you to hear this again. I give you the questions for all of the quizzes ahead of time, so you can construct your answer, do spell check, and when you're ready, you just go into the course, copy and paste it right there. You're not going to go in the course, open up the quiz, and go, oh, there's the question, because I've already given you the questions here. That applies to all of the chapters in this course. You can look at the end of the course book. You will find the instructions on the special assignment, and I would urge you to go begin looking at that. Some of the terms that are in there won't make any sense because we just started the class, but nonetheless, be a great resource for you to get into that right now. So that is the course layout, the expectations, Brightspace, and the course book. So let's talk about chapter 1. As I quickly went through in the course book, we have an introduction to behavior management. And in the attention section, I really focus on the basic sociological perspective on behavior management. And that is social control. All social groups, which by definition all have a culture, have within those cultures mechanisms to respond when people act outside of the normal behavioral expectations that they would have. So you're in a school, you're expected to study and submit your work and whatnot, and that's all spelled out. But if you went for a particular amount of time without doing that, like sign up for a class and you're just not submitting any assignments, eventually the social control mechanism that is built into the social organization of the University of Maine at Augusta and my class, that culture would respond. First, of course, reaching out. Or is something going on? Can I help you to catch up? And then might get a little bit more serious. I mean, if you don't start participating in the work, we're going to take you out of the class. And the consequence of that is going to be potentially time wasted, money wasted, delaying your graduation or whatever. So what you see is that when people behave in a certain way that is in line with the expectations of a culture, they receive the rewards of that culture. When they act outside of those and the social control mechanism is trying to get them back in line with the expectation, there can be negative consequences about that. That is a simple statement of the nature of human social organization. All entities has this. Your family has, what happens when you put your elbows on the table if that's not a thing? And it's precise because at home, you put your elbows on the table till the cows come home. At grandma's house, don't you dare put your elbows on the table. You'll get a talking to. There'll be a social control mechanism that's specific to where you are. It's a wonderful, wonderful mechanism to study, to see how different organizations, different social groups have those specific expectations. So we're led into this kind of a scientific look at that. And, we're going to get into this a lot more in the next couple chapters, but just as a kind of an understanding of the concept of behavior management, I want to refer you to the goals of psychology, the general goals of psychology. Maybe you got this in Introduction to Psychology, I don't know, but the goals is to describe, explain, predict, and control human and animal behavior. It's actually that could actually be the definition of psychology. So explain, we label things, we name things, we call them certain things. Describe. Sorry, we count things, we name them, we look at all the statistics. How often does that happen? Blah blah. We're describing. Then explain is where we come up with theories. Okay, what are the relationship between variables? How much TV can you watch before it affects your grade point average? Those kinds of relationships, all the theories that we have about how the intermingling of things, many of which can be contradictory to each other in the field of psychology. I hope you found out that, really interesting quality about human behavior. It defies explanation. So we have a bunch of theories, and then we have the ability to predict. And we can say, let's say we do have a study that talks about the amount of television that somebody can watch and how it affects their grade point average, there might be a line at which we would say, well, if you're watching this much television above that line, high probability I can predict a high probability that you're going to do less well in school. Now it's just a prediction, not 100%. You might be brilliant, can look at a page, memorize it, those kinds of things. I know for me, if I spend way too much time doing other activities, I'm not going to do well in academics. Just not the way. I have to study. And then finally, control. We could actually take that advice and say, okay, I'm going to watch less TV, and I'm going to use that time I would have watched TV and do something productive like my homework and get better grades. So we could see that. Now behavior management came along, and of all the theories, it is probably the best single theory that we have at doing all of those things. For one, it describes behavior as stimuli, response. We have the antecedents, behaviors, and consequences. You're going to learn a whole lingo associated with describing behavior, which to date is probably the most accurate way of describing human behavior. Very, very observant based, no assumptions about what, sort of mechanisms going on. That doesn't matter. I'm looking at your behavior. This is what you're doing, and this is what we call it. And this is how often it's happening. That very, very concrete way of looking at human behavior. Then the basic theory, which you're going to learn about later, the ABC contingency theory, is that antecedents and consequences, the circumstances you're under, and the availability of rewards and punishments act upon or operate upon the behavior. The ABC contingency theory, which is the heart of what we call operant conditioning. Now, there's other types of learning. In this class, we're going to look at classical conditioning, which is a huge part of behaviorism as well. But when it comes to behavior management, the tools that we're using rely on the theory of operant conditioning, exemplified by the ABC contingency theory. Now, predicting, we've done a lot of analysis of behavior, and we see these relationships over and over. So it's a really, really great way to understand human behavior and its consequences. But probably of all the theories, the most effective aspect of behavior management has been its purported ability to change human behavior. When we look at that ABC contingency theory in a couple weeks, we'll take a look at that. When we are in the position to manipulate the A and the C in the ABC contingency theory, we can manage behavior. That behavior can be our own behavior because we are managing the circumstances and the availability of rewards and punishments to manage our own behavior, make better choices, or can manage somebody else's behavior by managing the antecedents and the consequences. And there has been no form of intervention in history that has been more effective than behavior management. It is the most effective. It is so effective that it is built into the very fabric of our society. The natural mechanisms. I get up in the morning, every morning I get up when the alarm goes off. I go to work and I get my stuff done on a reasonable fashion, and I get paid. That is an ABC contingency theory built into the very fabric of our society. And those exist everywhere. When it's your spouse's birthday, A, and you want them to be happy and say thank you and be loving, C, what do? You buy them flowers, you give them a gift, you cook their favorite meal, you go out together, ABC. It's all built in. We'll get right into it. I'm going to have you come up with a whole bunch of examples in your own life where the ABC contingency theory is activated like that. Now, there's a false premise that behavior management is all about punishment, and that is really not true. We're going to get into that early in the class too, is that punishments can be used to reduce behavior, and we're all subject to that. And in fact, many of the automatic mechanisms in our society, like traffic violations and fines and, stuff like that, punish bad behavior. Doing the right thing means you've avoided the punishment. There might be rewards, but I don't necessarily get a reward per se for driving my car under the speed limit. I will get punished. So there is a lot of that. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of reality about behavior management that makes it seem like it's all about punishment, but it really isn't. So if we look at a typical behavior, we look at mom and dad's behavior management plans. So for my own life, I'm the youngest of two older brothers. Actually, my dad went out and had two other kids with another wife, and now there's 5 of us. And I went from being the youngest to be the middle child. Talk about a confusing situation that was. But for all the time I was the youngest, my older brothers, of course, would pick on me. So I would go to my mom and I would say, Alan's hitting me. Okay, so my mom would go up to her. And I'll paraphrase this a little bit. My mom probably yelled at him or something, but probably said, Alan, when you're playing with your brother, don't hit him, or I'm going to send you to your room. Setting up an ABC. When you're playing with your brother and you hit him, I'm going to send you to the room. Now, Alan doesn't want to go to his room, but he wants to torment me anyway. So he may come up with another way. So he trips me, or he pushes me, or takes my toys, or whatever kind of thing. And I go to my mom and I say, Mom, he's doing it again. And my mom, stuck in this verbal contract, she would go up to my brother and said, you're going to need to go to your room, and said, I didn't hit him. One of the reasons why punishment is not as effective as reinforcement is because punishment may eliminate the behavior, but it creates what we call a behavioral vacuum. Alan, for some God knows reason, had the desire, the need, the drive to torment me. So, by eliminating his favorite way to torment me, it didn't address the need to torment, so he had to find another way to torment me. Way better if my mother had intervened and said, Alan, if you play nice with your brother, that decided to find a positive behavior, I will give you a new game for your, what would it be back then? Your Atari or something. I'll do something nice. I'll give you a reward. And then Alan's stuck. He neither has to chase after his desire for a new game, or he has to chase after his desire to torment me. And he has the choice to make. Now, if the game is that much more, in need, really wants that game, it might overpower the need for him to torment me. This is why punishment, as we will see, is a valuable tool, but it's not as good as reinforcement. And behavior management is all about teaching people the better choice or skills, the functional choice to make in light of competing demands. We'll get more into that later. So let's talk about, this video has been way too long already, but let's talk about the discussion in the quiz in this first chapter. So chapter 1 discussions, I want you to share personal times, either you or when you've implemented behavior plans with your kids or something like that, clean your room, we'll go out for ice cream, that kind of thing. I want you to give us some examples of behavior management as you have experienced it, when other people have been managing your behavior and when you've managed others. It can be good, it can be bad. Abusive situations technically can be described as behavior management. And I'm certainly willing to have those discussions, but we don't necessarily need to process all of that all the time. I mean, certainly one of the reasons why abusive situations persist is because they actually manage behavior in not the way that's ultimately the best for you, but they work. And that's one of the very tricky aspects of dealing with an abusive situation, is how good they are at managing somebody's behavior. Not in a fair way. I'm not defending them at all, but they're very effective on a technical sense. So for this discussion, you're free to share whatever you would like to share with the class. This is a public forum, so everybody's going to read it. But I'm looking for a variety of different ways in which these mechanisms have impacted your life. Now, based simply on chapter 1, I want for the quiz, the first question is asking, what would motivate a person to act in a dysfunctional way? Come up with an explanation for that. And the second question is, why is it important for behavior management to focus on teaching new skills? We're going to see that reinforce new functional skills to replace the negative skill set, the negative behaviors that someone has been, the typical situation in a classroom. If a student, and it's rare, we'll get to this, if a student is acting out in class because they're trying to get the attention of the teacher, well, my first question is, why does the student have to go through such extreme measures to get the attention of their teacher? That would be my first question. The second question is, what need is being met by that student by acting out that can be met with a better, more functional behavior? How do you get the attention of your teacher? You act out, or you become a helper for the teacher. One is better than the other in the long run. So why is it important to teach functional skills in behavior management? Why do we want to do that instead of just punishing? So that's it for this week. So you will be participating in that discussion. You're participating in the quiz. I also have sort of a standing sort of thing. If you go into the discussion section, like I showed you, and you see the class lounge, student lounge or something, class lounge, go ahead and introduce yourself to each other. My classes tend to involve a lot of sharing, and part of that initial sort of communication with each other is to get into the notion of sharing about yourself. Now, you put the limits on that as much as you want. I ask for a lot of personal revelation in my quizzes and everything. You are free to make somebody up and describe them or describe somebody else, even when I'm asking you to describe yourself. I mean, but my approach in teaching is always centered around the notion that self-exploration in the milieu of learning psychology is the most powerful of learning methodologies. I learned a lot about myself as I learned about psychology. And so, okay, so that's it for this week. Stay tuned for more videos as they come out each week. Please take the time. They won't be as long as this one because I just did the whole introduction here, but they're worth watching because I explain a little bit what's going on in the class. It's my opportunity to clarify things, focus on the things that I want you to focus on, and get to know me a little bit too. So I look forward to seeing you folks online. Welcome to class, and take care.